Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. In this video I will be showing you guys how I created these water slide decals to add to my 30-ounce skinny tumbler. So here you can see that I've already created these. I actually had a video where I started from scratch, but something happened with it and I couldn't save it. So I'm just going to show you guys a quick way to do this. So all you have to do is go through your Google and search for any cartoon or image that you want to use for your water slide. So for this theme, I wanted to do like a 90s throwback cartoon for my Tumbler, which I will be putting on a white background. So once you upload everything, because I found all these images first and I uploaded them, and I can show you guys where I have them located. So here are all the files or images that I went through. When you go to search them, put PNG at the end of it. Like, let's say you were looking for Rocco's Modern Life, you'll put PNG so that it's a transparent background. And if there's not, you would just go through the process of actually deleting the background around the image. So what I would do is I would click on each row individually and then insert them into the design space. And you want to do them in sections so that it has time to process and upload instead of doing all of these at the same time. So after I was able to insert all of them, I put a square into the design space and I changed the dimensions. So I changed the dimensions because my tumbler is 10 inches wide and it's 9 inches high. So what I'm going to do is split it into two. So I'm going to unlock the square and then change the width to 5 and then keep the height the same, which is 9. And then make sure that you just lock it back. And then you can change the color to whatever color your tumbler is so that you get an idea of how the images will look. So I would change this to white and then duplicate it. And all you have to do is arrange this to the back and do the same thing for this one. So before you resize your images, you want to insert these squares into your design space first so you know where your edges will be and how far and how big to make these images. So once these are all placed, and you also want to make sure once you have these images in the design space that you overlap them the way that you want them to look. So let's say if, you know, Scooby-Doo is overlapping Doug's face right here, you want to make sure that he's visible. So you want to go through each image and arrange them according to how you want them to look. You don't want certain parts of the characters to be hidden, so you want to make sure that you arrange them according to how they should look. So if you want a better visual, you can also change your canvas by clicking on the square down here and then selecting your color up here to a different background. So here you can kind of see or get an idea of how the images will look better. And when you go to make it, when you're officially done placing everything together, you will hide the squares behind it. Since I already have two squares, I'm just going to delete the ones that I just showed you guys how to make. And then you will select each section individually like this, and you will attach them. See, I've already attached them, and then you will flatten them as well. So when you flatten them, it will be easier for it to be printed out all as one piece. So now I'm going to print these out onto Waterslide decal paper and spray them with Rust-Oleum clear gloss 3 separate times to make sure that the ink doesn't run when I go to place it inside of the water. So here I have my white spray painted tumbler. I use the flat Rust-Oleum white spray for this, and there is no epoxy on here. It's just only spray paint, and I'm going to be adding the decal right on top of it. You want to make sure that your base is white before you put your decal on it as well. So that's why I was adding water on top of the spray painted tumbler. So now I am letting my decal sit in room temperature to warm water for 30 seconds to a minute. You can watch your decal or your water slide in the water to see if the edges will start to peel back, and that's how you know that it's ready to be removed and placed onto your tumbler. So here I'm just placing the whole water slide onto the tumbler with the backing, and I'm slowly sliding the water slide to attach to the tumbler and then take the backing off so that it can fall into place. I find it really easy to apply the water slide onto a tumbler this big when it's attached to your turner, so that it's easy to turn it as you're placing it on there. So I'm making sure that my hands are wet as I'm touching the water slide as well. I do use the squeegee to get out the wrinkles, and I also use my hands as well. I use my hands a lot for certain things that you may want to use tools for, but I just feel like sometimes it may be faster or easier for me, but I just make sure that my hands are wet when I am touching it, if I have to touch it in any way. But this squeegee, or the squeegee that I do have, you can get from Amazon. It actually came in the box for the turners that I have. I received probably about 2 or 3 in each box. So as I'm getting the wrinkles out, I'm also dipping it into the water as well. I'm just really paranoid when it comes to these water slides. I've messed up so many of them because they run, or you may use the wrong spray, because there's been plenty of times where I sprayed 3 or 4 times for a water slide and it still runs. So it could be the room temperature of the water, or it could be the spray that you're using, or even the water slide itself, the brand. It could just not be that great. But I feel like I started using Rust-Oleum clear gloss recently, and it's been working pretty well for me for the most part. So after I get all the wrinkles out, I'm going to let this part of the decal dry first before I apply the second part of this decal, only because if I start to add water on the other side, it could seep on the other side and actually shift the decal. So I do want to make sure that this one is dry first. And when I'm done getting the wrinkles out, I'm just going through to get rid of any excess water that may still be on top of the decal. Okay, so now that the other side is dry, here I am just going to repeat the same steps. I'm wetting the back part of this tumbler and then inserting the water slide into water. I dumped out the other water and made fresh water for this. And then I'm going to apply it in this empty space that you see. And yes, the water will run to the other side, but it's dry, so it won't be it won't damage it. Just make sure that you do dry up that water and not let it sit on there, because it could ruin it and also destroy the color of the other side. I also want to say that I did not cut my water slide through the Cricut. I hand cut around each part of the water slide for both of them, just because, one, I don't fully trust the Cricut to cut anything for me other than the vinyl. I feel like I always have trouble when it comes to print then cut programming on here. For some reason, it seems to always cut into my image, and I never bleed my images either, because the printer I have doesn't do the bleeding properly that I've seen for other people's designs. It always changes the actual color of it, so I never bleed. When it asks you to bleed, I always turn that option off, and I always cut my own images. So now I'm going to go through and make sure that I remove any water from the dried side of the decal or the water slide. And then I'm going to go through and get the wrinkles out of the new one that I just applied, and then continue to get rid of any water before it dries on the other side. So now the whole decal, both the back and the front, are dry. So now I'm going to sit here and add my epoxy. I actually put the B in first. I used the Clear Cast Alumilite epoxy. I put B in first, and then I put the A in, and I let it sit before I start stirring it. And personally, it works best for me to reduce any bubbles. So I let it sit for probably about 5 to 10 minutes together, and then I mix it without moving the popsicle stick from out of the cup. I mix it until it's clear, of course, and it works really great for me to not have as many bubbles. And I also like using the wide popsicle sticks versus the skinny ones because I feel like it stirs a little bit faster. So the epoxy will take about 8 hours to dry, and I'm gonna let it dry completely until tomorrow, and then come back and turn it matte for you guys. So here is my cartoon tumbler all finished with the epoxy. You can see that it does have that glossy look right now, and I'm about to turn it matte. I think it came out pretty great. The only thing that I would probably do different is slide the second water slide over just a little bit so that there isn't a little space in there, but I think it came out pretty great. So now I'm just turning the water on because you have to wet your cup first before using the final sand that I have here. So the instructions for the final sand does say that you can use a cloth to rub the final sand into your project, but I'm just going to use my hands for this, which if I can always use my hands for everything, that's what I personally prefer to use. But here I'm just making sure that the tumbler is completely wet, then turning the water off and using the final sand. So if you've never used the final sand before to matte your tumbler or anything, it could take more than once for it to turn completely matte, and this took me 3 times for it to be completely matte. So just make sure that you use enough final sand and completely rub it all throughout, and it will eventually turn matte. When doing this step, you definitely want to make sure you get the rim and the bottom of the cup because they're just so easily missed. You're so focused on the center of the cup, but just make sure you get the very top and the bottom of your cup as well. So after I'm done with my first layer, I just rinse it off. And whenever this cup is wet, it will look glossy. So you would need to use something soft, like maybe a rag or a towel to dry it so that you can see the true color or finish that it is. So here I'm just going to be repeating the same exact steps that I previously did, just wetting the tumbler first, adding the final sand, and then rubbing it as good as you can into the cup, making sure that you get the top and the bottom, the middle, all areas the best that you can. So here is the finished tumbler. It no longer has that glossy finish that it initially had. And at the end of this video, I will show you guys a side-by-side video that I took outside so that you can see the difference between the two. Also keep in mind that if you want to change your cup to matte, it will show some imperfections through. So if you have any wrinkles in your Waterslide paper, it could show those. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you learned something in this video. I appreciate you guys for subscribing. If you haven't already, please do so. And you can also share my videos with someone that may like them as well. Thank you.